Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Institute for Personal Development, where total consciousness is the new frontier. Kriya Yoga is the union of the individual with the divine. Join us as we explore the practices that initiate this process.
Well, good morning and welcome to the Voice of Yoga. Let's talk consciousness. I am your hostess, Lisa Winton, and with me is Kenny Toy, also known as Swami Jayananda, founder of Institute for Personal Development. We're located here in Hampton, New Hampshire. Good morning, Swami. Thank you for being here today. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. And you?
I'm doing great on this fabulous sunny day today. Well, I want to thank the listeners for tuning in. Well, today on the Voice of Yoga, we will be discussing temptation and the struggle between good and evil. Our description on this week's program states that there is no such thing as bad energy, only energy wrongly used. Okay, Swami, we're going to need you to help us out with that. Why don't you get us started?
Yeah, the whole concept of good and evil and comes under in yoga or in Kriya Yoga under the whole concept of manifestation, how things come into form. Because without a clear understanding of how reality is taking place, it's really hard for us to even understand what it is that we're trying to do with the practice of yoga or with this concept of spirituality. Because the concept of a concealed deity is the meeting ground of all of our sciences and religions. This hidden force that provides and sustains everything isn't a new concept. And most of the text, when you read about it, this force, this energy field is everywhere and in everything. And the big question is, if this concept of God is everywhere and in everything, why don't we see it? And our explanation for that in Kriya Yoga is that the concept of God is that God is everywhere and in everything. God is whole. And it rests in this perfect state of divine unity. Now, in order for something to manifest, materialize, it must split from this unified state. It manifests in half and then leaves behind a complementary, unmanifested other part. Now, there's the Trinity, because we've got the manifested, we've got the complementary, unmanifested other part, and we've got the indivisible, unified state. Now, the whole thing of this struggle between good and evil takes place in the realms of reality that we call duality. That you've got the manifested and you've got the complementary unmanifested. And one of the reasons why we say that there's really no such thing as bad energy, only energy wrongly used, is because with regard to the concept of duality, you can't have good without manifesting the complementary, unmanifested bad part. You can't have peace without war. You can't have war without the complementary, unmanifested peace part. So it becomes an ongoing struggle with regard to trying to balance, good and evil, right and wrong. And the way that in yoga we've learned to manage that is not so much with trying to find peace on earth as we learn to find it by being able to transcend duality. And so that's where, the whole concept of temptation comes in. Because we come in with a physical body, and our bodies have desires, our bodies have needs. And the problem is that we are strongly attached to duality, to the tangible parts. And the pull is very strong to the outside world. And the way that it plays out is that the outside world is like a magnet, and we're like carbon steel. Now, with regard to the concept of this pull, this temptation, in yoga, the way that you overcome it is that you have to change your metal. That we actually enlist strategies, because in order for us to separate from that pull, we have to refine ourselves. So you have to take that carbon steel and literally refine it into a non-magnetic stainless steel. See, that dynamic is what enables us to separate from this pull. But there's really nothing intrinsically evil with this ongoing struggle. Because, again, there really isn't any such thing as bad energy. It's just we're trying to do something, with an energy that it's not capable of doing. And that's one of the things that we find in Kriya Yoga, is this law of attraction, that like attracts like. And we have a physical body, we have desire, we have needs, but we're programmed and we're looking for something tangible, something that comes under the heading of duality. And the key to the whole thing is not so much in making all the right choices based on our selection in duality. The real key to the success of life is being able to compartmentalize your understanding of reality, see how things are taking place in accordance with these laws of opposites, and realigning yourself with this part of yourself that is unified. That's why we say Kriya Yoga is union of the individual with the divine. So the real choice here is between good and evil, which are interesting terms, I think, in and of themselves. Because the term evil is really an archery term. That, like we talked about in one of the earlier shows, the whole concept of sin meaning, again, an archery term, meaning missing the mark. Evil was anything that wasn't the mark. And so trying to hit this concept of a concealed deity, this indivisible unified state, isn't an easy target. You're trying to align yourself with something that's invisible and intangible, and you're using instruments that are primarily designed to work on duality. So that's where, your path of action, your path of knowledge, and your path of devotion come in place. We have to be taught how to do this. And the whole intention is to recognize, the difference between things that were dualistic and things that are unified. And probably one of the best stories I've ever had to help us explain this dynamic, and also maybe to help us with the concept of temptation, came from the story in the Bible, the fall from Eden. The story of Adam and Eve being in the Garden of Eden, in this, realm of paradise, and being tempted, because God said to Adam and Eve, you can eat from these trees, which was the tree of life. But if they ate from these trees, which was the tree of knowledge and the tree of good and evil, then there would be retribution. And of course, this concept of the devil, on some level was able to tempt them. But if you think about it, if all you knew was eternal happiness, and somebody said to you that, there's something better than what you've got, then I could definitely understand why it could maybe somehow pique your curiosity. But with the fall from Eden, if you really examine the story, I mean, it's one bite of an apple from one of those other trees. They're banished from Eden. They're thrown into the realms of suffering and decay. Now, our dilemma is different than theirs because we're born in to the realms of suffering and decay. So we're drawing from duality, fear and limitation, and the pull is really in its favor. I really kind of like what C.S. Lewis said in Screwtape Letters. He talks about the concept of the devil can tempt. The enemy, the concept of God, can only woo. And the reason is because of this original sin, because of this pattern that our physical bodies come in with, we are drawn toward food, mother, approval, external reinforcement. And the whole thing is now we had to be taught how to separate from that and realign ourselves with this thing called God or goodness. And that wasn't just magic. And it's not just an intellectual accomplishment. The physics is really important. If we do not change our physical bodies, if we do not change the pattern in our physical body, then the pull, the temptation will always be there. And that's one of the things, that, again, coming back to what I always say about, our religious institutions today and how they focus too much on conduct and not enough on this connection, not enough on the physics of spirituality and the whole concept of becoming divine, becoming God, or becoming good.
Well, that's interesting that the myth of Adam and Eve is that they started in a unified state, which I think is what you're saying, and then they got pulled into the dualistic state, and we were born into the dualistic state, and then we want to become whole. I know you've said that in the theory classes. That's our job, if you will, in this life is to become unified, with the divine. And so it's just interesting how it's an opposite effect. Now, do you find that people become anxious or they have problems in this world because they're not unified? They're in this dualistic state and they want to become whole.
Well, to answer your question, I mean, that in and of itself is an archetype. That's a central theme that all of us are dealing with. That's one of the reasons why, we definitely have choices. We can survive. We can chronologically age and psychologically, spiritually remain in this underdeveloped state. But there is going to be retribution. There's going to be a kickback that comes from this unlived latent potential that we all do want to return to this unified state. And that's why if we are not growing psychologically and spiritually, for the most part, we're struggling with symptoms of guilt, shame, anger, resentment, blame, emptiness, and boredom. That all comes from the kickback from this unlived latent potential that we want to be whole. In the Bible, the way that they explain it is that it's the jealous God that you read about in the Bible wants your undivided attention. If you don't get it, you're going to have problems. And that's not just some, I want to say, concept that you can dismiss. Collectively, you can just see how many people are struggling, and trying to siphon off the guilt, the shame, the anger, the resentment, the blame, the emptiness, and the boredom because they're disconnected from this secret source of sustenance, this concealed deity. They've got their back to this really important resource, and we're having problems.
So you said earlier that God is in everyone and everything. So would you say that our first steps towards becoming united with the divine is to really to understand that concept and have this awareness that God is in every person and in everything? Because I know sometimes we feel this energy, if you will, whether you like somebody right away or that you don't like somebody right away. So what kind of energy is that all about? And then how does a person come to that conclusion, oh gosh, well this person is of the divine as well, I should love this person as myself?
Well, to answer your question, the term in yoga is what we call namaste. You know, that we bow to the divinity within each other. You know, we're all equally divine, but we may not be equally sensitive or aware of that divinity. You know, that there definitely is a difference between a human that is drawing from duality and a human that is drawing from this indivisible, unified state. You know, the term was called apotheosis. And for somebody who has that broader sense of awareness, you know, one of the things that does not happen is that you do not get judgmental. And the other thing is that you develop a tremendous amount of compassion, because we know that each and every one of us is struggling, you know, and fighting this hard battle, this ongoing struggle between good and evil. And it's all going to be based on choices that I'm making, and we're all doing the best we can with what we know. I think the biggest problem is all the things we think we know that just aren't so.
Okay, Swami, thank you. I want to get back to that concept of apotheosis, but let's take a break for a moment to hear a message from our sponsors. We'll be with you, listeners, shortly.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate.
If you are looking for a Samadhi-based experience, IPD Kriya Yoga has the goods. A complete yoga program that includes the practices and the process. Kriya Yoga Theory 1 live classes and videos. Get your arms around the spiritual science of Kriya Yoga.
You know, the intention of why we practice is to embody spirit. Feel connected to the life.
Kriya Yoga Asana live classes and videos. A cosmically engineered system of exercises to initiate apotheosis. A system of exercises engineered for dining and dancing at the Cosmic Ballroom. Kriya Yoga Theory 2 live classes and videos. A practice in open form designed to facilitate positive growth of consciousness. Get your Labyrinth video.
I find the positive side of it is it pulls a lot of things together.
Kriya Yoga Mantra and Meditation. With repetition comes absorption. Pray on prana and become divine.
At the same time, we all have a unique talent and gift to give back to the universe.
Private sessions. The mysteries of the universe have always been handed down verbally from teacher to student. Call or click now and get started. 603-929-0303 or www.ipdtransform.com. Namaste.
Purnamariya Purnameva Vashishate.
Well, welcome back. For those of you just joining us, you are listening to The Voice of Yoga, and we are talking consciousness. So, Swami, before we took our break, we were talking about apotheosis, and you were saying that how we're struggling every day with the good and evil, so it's almost kind of like we're on this battlefield. What do you recommend for our listeners to do to try to overcome this battle? What is it that they should do to make it easier and have this sense of awareness?
Well, I think knowledge is power in that case. That's why Kriya Yoga is a path of action. It's a path of knowledge, and it's a path of devotion. And, to really overcome this struggle, you're going to need all of that. Because, first of all, for every action, there is an equal and an opposite reaction that we're chained to. So having knowledge of how things are taking place kind of gets you behind the forms, and you're able to take consideration for consequences. You're able to tailor your responses so that things will burn cleaner, with not a lot of unresolved issues and accumulated, I want to say, troubles and problems and consequences, so. And then, of course, the most important thing is to have a sense of connectedness to this concept of a divinity. The more you can align yourself with this concealed deity, this indivisible, unified field, the better it will be for you. Because, like we have been talking in all the other shows, it is our connection to this source of sustenance that makes everything else possible. Even the concept of being good. Being good is a completely different dynamic when you are drawing from particles and waves and you're struggling with all its temptations that are keeping you attached to this limited source of sustenance. And as opposed to when you are drawing from truth and wholeness and you are becoming divine and good. Where, on one side of it is more of a conduct performance, and the other one, it becomes your nature. It's what you do naturally.
We had talked in a previous show a lot about Dharma, and then earlier you were saying on this program about that we always have choices. So how do we know that the choices we make are because we're making that choice, or if it's our Dharma? Because I know I've heard you also say before that everything that is happening to us is because we, in some sense, whether consciously or subconsciously, we have ordered it. So how do we know if the choice we make is because we're making that choice or if it's Dharma related?
Well, to answer your question, Dharma in and of itself is a conscious choice. We don't really get our Dharma, our true Dharma, until we get an expanded sense of awareness. So first we have to divide and conquer before we can unite and stand. First we have to individuate. And that's what the connection does. Now I have the benefit of internal support. Now I'm making choices based on all of the things that, I recognize as, what I want my life to be. And then as we sustain the connection, with it comes this broader sense of purpose. Like if I have a unique talent, because each and every one of us does something better than everybody else. Now, once I have established myself in who I am, then, of course, the concept of a Dharma isn't something that's happening to you, but it's something that's part of your conscious creation.
So let's go back to apotheosis. So the process of the human becoming divine, well, how does that relate to a person what is it that they're supposed to do first? Are you talking about they have to have first a sense of awareness, and then they need to follow like a path of action, a path of devotion, path of knowledge? I mean, is that what you would recommend that a person do to start this apotheosis?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. The innate drive that we want to be whole isn't something that happens instinctually. That's something that we have to make happen. Initiating this progressive cycle is something that we have to be taught how to do from somebody who can do it. Again, we might have mentioned this in earlier shows, that's what the alchemists believed. That this concept of God wasn't perfect because nature, God's creation, wasn't perfect. And the word perfect here, purna, means whole. So the human isn't this lowly worm of a creature seeking redemption, but we're an intricate part of this process of us becoming whole. This unification of consciousness. And so, we all have a responsibility to this, but we have to make it happen. And we have to be taught how to do it from somebody who can do it. And that's why, the world primarily is in the state that it's in, is because we do not have good leadership in this department in our lives. The institutions that have taken over our religions, which were, originally that's where you went to learn how to become a whole person, have become corrupted. And so now they're not doing what they were intended to do. And so what I recommend is that you find, that information, and it's not readily available. There aren't a lot of people that are out there teaching people how to grow psychologically and spiritually. One of our biggest barriers today is just how large the celebrity pseudo-spiritual community has become. There's a lot of garbage that's out there that people are following, and they're really not going anywhere other than pretending to be doing better than they really are. A good metaphysical or mystical system isn't magic, it's physics. It doesn't take forever. You should almost start to get your results almost immediately. But you're going to need a plan. And if your plan doesn't look like, skillful use of thought, skillful use of breath, skillful use of water, skillful use of food, and skillful use of exercise, then chances are that it's going to come up short. It's not going to get you what it is that you're trying to do.
All right, great. Thank you. Well, in closing, I would like to invite our listeners out there to visit the website, follow us on Pinterest and Twitter and Facebook, and keep those comments and questions and curiosities coming. Swami does enjoy hearing from you and will respond to you as well. Well, on our program next week, we will be talking about the upcoming summer solstice and the new moon that's going to be happening next Friday, the 27th. So, Swami, any final thoughts or comments on temptation or about our program next week?
Well, the thing that I would like to say is that given the choice between making a right decision and a wrong decision, I would say always try and make the right decision. And with that, I wish everybody a good day, and namaste.
Great. Thank you for being here. Some wonderful information. And thank you, listeners, for tuning into our program, The Voice of Yoga. This is Lisa Winton. With me, Swami Jayananda. We'll be signing off. Have a wonderful Kriya Yoga kind of day. Namaste.